Hi everyone, in this video I'll show you guys how to set up a powerful combo featuring Lune and Sciel that you can set up and use as early as Act 1 after you unlock Sciel, of course. This combo is pretty powerful but also pretty easy to set up, and it has 3 components to it altogether. The first component I just did, which is simply landing a burn on any enemy on the field. I use Maelle for that, but really any character works, you just need to land a burn. The second component is having Sciel use intervention. Now you don't need Sciel to go second, this works even if Sciel goes after Lune, so the speed doesn't really matter, you just need your burn person to go first. And with Sciel all you're doing is using intervention on Lune, and this gives Lune an instant turn. The third component is having Lune use Elemental Trick, where if all 4 hits land a critical hit, you get the exact 4 stains that allow you to use Elemental Genesis right here. Elemental Genesis is an extremely powerful attack, as you can see in one-shot Monoko. It also hits all enemies on the field, so you can even use this to kill off random fights in one round. So here I'll go through how to set up the combo and I'll explain every step of the way. You don't really need a lot, and this actually leaves a lot of room and flexibility to also set up the rest of the characters how you see fit based on your playstyle and preference. So starting off with Lune, since she's the one that's landing the killer blow. For Lune, first of all, you need to obviously pick up Elemental Trick and Elemental Genesis. And it isn't that far, you should be able to comfortably get this as early as Act 1. So what I will do is go to Electrify, and then Mayhem, and then Elemental Trick and Elemental Genesis. Mayhem, although wasn't used in the video, is actually also pretty useful. For one thing, Elemental Genesis cannot break. So, in case you're fighting bosses and they can survive one Elemental Genesis, so instead maybe you want to break the boss, you can instead use Mayhem over Elemental Genesis to land a break. Mayhem is also there as your backup skill in case where you haven't yet have a 100% critical rate. Say you're early in the game and you are unlucky in the sense that Elemental Trick doesn't land the exact 4 stains that you need for Elemental Genesis. In that case, instead of Elemental Genesis, you can then use Mayhem as your backup attack. Beyond that, I would also recommend considering to pick up Wildfire. Wildfire is a very good early game tool that lands burn on all enemies, but for the purposes of this combo, you don't really need it. The other thing about Elemental Genesis, just quickly, is that it hits 8 times, and in early games, so Act 1 all the way to end of Act 2, you really want to use attacks that are multi-hitting. That's because the picto power that lets you break the damage cap, which is the painted power, I believe that's what it's called, you don't really get that until you reach Act 3. And obviously once you can break the 9999 damage cap, then other attacks are also viable even though they have less hits. But until then, where your cap is just 9999 damage, you obviously want to use attacks that do multiple hits at once, so that way you get the multiple instances of 9999. And it actually isn't that hard to reach 9999 damage, especially once you hit Act 2 and you unlock different types of pictos. Next up, in terms of attributes, the key stat is critical rate, and that's because you want Elemental Trick to crit on all 4 hits so that it can generate the corresponding stains for Elemental Genesis. Because of that, luck is by far the most important stat, and in case you're wondering why I didn't have 99 luck, it's because 99 versus 98 luck doesn't actually affect your critical rate, therefore I kept it at 98. Beyond luck, you might also want to invest a little bit into vitality. Personally, I have vitality at 20 just so that I have a health that I'm comfortable with. You can go slightly lower or slightly higher depending on your comfort level. The rest, in terms of my agility and defense, I would recommend next putting some points into agility so that Lune moves as frequently as possible since she's the main component in this combo. You can also, of course, invest some into defense if you feel that you want to be able to tank more hits. I didn't do that because in my current setup, I actually have Maelle as my party tank. But if your setup is different and you are worried about surviving some early hits or boss attacks, you can of course put some points into defense as well. In terms of weapons, the weapon actually doesn't really matter too much. I use Kralim, and in the video versus Monaco, my Kralim was only at level 10. I've since leveled the weapon higher. I'm not weapon level 19. But you don't really need the Kralim for this to work. The main reason why I use Kralim is for the level 4 and level 10 passive, where at level 4 you get more damage if you use an attack of a different element. I'm not so sure whether this works on Elemental Genesis yet. My theory is that since both Elemental Trick and Elemental Genesis does hits of varying elements, the varying elements will benefit from the 20% damage increase each time until it resets back to the first one. I'm not so sure that that works, or whether you are required to use attacks of different elements instead. It's not very clear here, but let me know if you know the answer to this. But anyway, the level 10 passive, I find it to be useful as a backup as well. Again, in case Elemental Trick doesn't crit all 4 times, maybe you only get 2 or 3 crits. You at least already will start the turn with 2 random stains. So there is still a chance you can use Elemental Genesis even if you don't get all 4 crits. But beyond that, even if you don't get the corresponding stains for Elemental Genesis, just by critting twice out of the 4 times, so likely to get with a crit rate higher than 50, you still get 4 stains to then use Mayhem as a backup attack. So that's the real main reason why I use Kralim. If you don't want to use Kralim or you don't have this weapon yet, the next best bet is to maybe use a weapon that corresponds with the luck stat, and the Deminarim is another good candidate for this because it scales with the luck stat, and your luck is fairly high, so this weapon should hit fairly hard as well. The level 4 isn't that useless as well because you would also unlock Electrify, so the level 4 passive actually makes Electrify free to use, and Electrify generates 2 stains, so the worst case scenario where you can't get Elemental Genesis working yet, maybe your crit rate is still too low, you can try to get to 4 stains and use Mayhem instead until such time where your crit rate is a bit more dependable. So these are the 2 main weapons I would recommend. In terms of pictos, the most important thing about pictos is really just the stats, and obviously the most important will be critical rate. Speed is also very, very useful, but most pictos with critical rate tend to also have speed, so it's a no-brainer. So you just want to plonk in the 3 highest critical rate pictos that you have, and then you update this as and when you find new pictos. The soft cap that you want to aim for first is having a combined critical rate of 75%. Currently I'm at 84%, so I'm above it. And in case why you're wondering why 75%, that's because you can then combine it with critical burn. I guess brings me to the Lune setup. So Lune setup, you don't really need a lot. The only one key Lune that you want is critical burn, and you unlock this as early as Act 1. So critical burn is how you hit 100% critical rate and get the combo going. So you want this equipped at all times. Beyond that, you just want to have attack boosting and AP boosting Luminas. So as and when you get them, you can step them on. I like to also have energizing start. So you start off the battle with more AP, and this sustains the combo the first few early rounds. By then, you likely kill off all monsters on the screen. The 2 key damage boosting ones you get early on are Roulette and Teamwork. So Roulette gives you a chance to hit double damage, which is a very easy way to get to the 9999 cap early on. And Teamwork gives you a straight up damage boost as long as you have a full party, so this is a no-brainer. See, you don't really need first strike as well because you want your burn character to go before Lune. Unless your burn character has a higher speed, then first strike can also give that. But because you invested so much into luck, luck also increases the speed. So most of the time you'll be able to go before the bosses anyway. So you don't really need first strike. That's really that. So the rest is flexible. I have breaker and auto shell, but you don't need this for the combo. But these are nice to have, and the rest is really personal choice from here on. Moving on to Sciel. So with Sciel, once you unlock her, the first thing you want to gun for is intervention, obviously, because this is the second component to the combo. Intervention allows Lune to have 2 actions on turn 1, which allows her to then use Elemental Trick followed by Elemental Genesis to wipe the floor. So unlock this first. Next, I will actually recommend going for Fortune's Fury. That's because eventually into Act 2, I haven't reached there yet, but eventually you'll be able to fight an optional boss that allows you to unlock the Cheater's Picto. And the Cheater's Picto will already allow Lune to act twice on the first round. In which case, instead of intervention, you can also opt to use Fortune's Fury. So Fortune's Fury will allow Lune to double her damage across both elemental trick and elemental genesis. The buff lasts for 1 turn, so it doesn't matter even if Lune gets 2 actions on the 1 turn. At least that's what I think. I haven't tested this yet because I haven't unlocked Cheetah's Picto. But this is definitely a good support skill to go for as well. Finally, since Sciel is already having support skills, I then went for Grim Harvest. Grim Harvest is an AoE heal, so I think it fits into the overall team, and you can then use Sciel as a dedicated support. In terms of attributes for Sciel, nothing really jumps out of the gun because you're not using her for damage. You don't really need Might and Luck or critical rate. You can, if you want to use Sciel also as a sub DPS, but from experience so far, Elemental Genesis is enough to kill everything up to the point where I'm in Act 2. So what I opted for is to go for a lot of agility first and foremost. I went for 70 because I feel this gives her enough speed to outspeed everything in the game, and also give her enough frequency of turns where she can set up the support so she can pass turns or heal the party as and when she needs to. So I think agility would be the most important stat here. Again, you can also set up vitality to the number that you're comfortable with. To me, I went for 20 vitality across all characters. And then the rest I dumped into defense just to make her tanky so that she lasts longer in battle, so that she can support longer in battle as well. If you don't want defense and you think you don't need it, then you can obviously invest into luck or more agility if you want to. But to me, so far, I think defense is the way to go. In terms of weapons and pictos and luminas for Lune, none of it is actually mandatory. So what I would recommend is going for a support type weapon. Currently, I have Rangason equipped. I can't remember where you unlock this, but it's not that far. It's not that late in Act 1. But if you don't have this, just use whatever weapon that you want. It doesn't really matter. Well, I feel this fits into her team overall as a support. And it also scales off agility and defense, both of which I think are good stats for her in this role. In terms of pictos, I just have ones that boost her health and her speed. I give her first strike just so that she also acts before Lune, but you don't really need these as well. On hindsight, you can just give this, give something else here, maybe another energizing start picto or auto shell or something else. And lastly, I have energizing heal. So this combos very nicely with her Grim Harvest. So Grim Harvest heals the entire party. So if you have this, it also gives everyone else 2 AP as well. Definitely a very strong passive for her. But it is very flexible. If you don't have any of these, you can just equip this under the Luminas instead. Coming to Luminas, you want ones that support her role as a support. So first of all, I have accelerating heal. So this also combos nicely with Rim Harvest. This allows Rim Harvest to also apply rush on every character in your party. I have critical burn just so that this gives her 50% roughly critical rate overall. She already has 24%, and it isn't very difficult to land burn on an enemy. So in case you need her as DPS or to land an emergency break, it's definitely an option. Energizing heal, I already have that, as well as energizing start. I also have more energizing start here so that she can spam her abilities more the first few rounds. And then the rest, I have some attack ones here and marking shots just in case I really want her to land a mark. And maybe if she has some additional AP. But that's really it. So feel free to play around. There are many other combos. You can use her maybe as a backup gunner, or maybe give her breaker to help her feel the enemy's break bar as well. But I don't really find this very useful because most of the time you'll be spamming her support abilities. So either heal or giving allies turn or using Fortune's Fury. So this is pretty much all you need to get Sciel going. The next up is your burn character. Now I use Maelle as my burn character, but you don't have to. Any character will work as long as they have a way to land burn. And because burning shots exist, so really any character can fulfill this role. I use Maelle because I like her, but beyond that, she also has access to Spark. So if you want a guaranteed way to land burn, this is a very easy way. So Spark straight up lands 3 burn on use. And that's really all you need. So I won't go through into detail here, but as an overview, I have Maelle also built as a party tank, which sounds quite weird, but I found that I don't really need the extra DPS. You can, of course, go for the traditional DPS route and use Medallion if you want to, and have 2 DPS on your team. Definitely, that works as well. And as a way, Maelle can still be a burn setter while still doing respectable DPS. But I find that since I invested a lot into luck for Lune, I really want to have a tank character to take the hits, and I found that you don't really need a lot of DPS so far anyway. As long as you keep your party sufficiently leveled, Elemental Genesis is more than enough to carry you through the first 2 acts. But if you want to, that's definitely an option. Instead, what I went for is Duenum. Duenum turns Maelle into an excellent tank overall. In particular, the level 4 passive that allows you to battery the rest of your party. So in defensive stance, anytime Maelle gains AP, she gives 1 AP to allies. So this is a very strong AP battery, particular because Maelle also have access to Mezzo Forte. And just so you know, it's not 1-to-1, so the battery gives 1 AP to all allies anytime Maelle gains AP, regardless of how many AP she gains. So using Mezzo Forte, for example, only gives 1 AP to the rest of the party. But that's alright because there are many passives here that goes very nicely with the Duenum weapon, which is why I use Maelle here. So one good example is Energizing Pain. And this is particularly useful, if you are very bad at parrying or dodging, like I am. So I just opted to build defenses on Maelle. You can see on the right that Maelle has very high defenses, so she can really take hits most of the time, and most fights doesn't last that long anyway. You just need to survive the first few rounds. So with Energizing Pain, and you combo this with Maelle's ability, I don't know how to pronounce this, Igai. I'm sorry, but along with this ability, so this ability allows Maelle to cover for allies. So anytime the enemy attacks, it's usually Maelle that's the one that will take it. And because Maelle takes hits, this will trigger every single round the enemy attacks. And because this triggers, Maelle herself will get AP, and because Maelle is getting AP, the rest of the party is getting AP. So this is one of the key Luminas in this combo. assuming the fight lasts that long. And then I also have Maelle as my so-called gunner, mainly to land burn and mark. So burning shots is another good way to land burn, and you don't need a lot of AP for Maelle anyway. Her support and tanking skills cost very few AP. So burning shots is another way to land burn. Burning mark is very good. So I have this on a picto for her. Anytime you land mark, you have 100% chance to burn. So this fits into her component role. And then obviously she has marking shots to land mark, and then rewarding mark to give her AP when she lands a mark or she hits a marked target, which again combos with Duenum. So she gets 2 AP and everyone else in the party gets 1 AP. So a lot of synergy here. Lastly, I also have attack lifesteal. This goes very well with her role as a tank. On the turns when you don't need to use her skills, you can just use a basic attack. This allows her to self-heal all the damage she's taken. But on top of this, it also have combo heal, so she attacks twice and heals more. And very importantly, she has energizing attack. So when she attacks on base attack, she batteries herself. And because she's batterying herself, her base attack also gives the rest of your party 1 AP per hit. So if you have combo attack, a base attack actually gives 2 AP to the rest of the party. This turns Maelle not only into a very competent tank with cover, but also as a party battery. You don't really need that much battery going on, and if you don't really want to, then you can also turn Maelle into another DPS. That's it for this setup. So that brings me to the end of this video. Certainly, I think overall this is a very good way to get you through the first 2 acts of the game, and it's also another viable strategy in the event where you missed out on the medallion weapon, because it is missable until you fight Golgra at least. And many videos I've seen sort of showcase sort of Act 3 damage when you have broken the damage cap. Not many actually show early Act 1 or Act 2 videos, which was why I decided to make this video here. Hope it's been helpful, and if you enjoyed the content, do leave a like and subscribe. Till then, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye!